Hi there, Wob. Oh, I'm afraid I can't hear you.
Unmuted the wrong screen.
Oh, there we go. It's fun, these virtual events.
Absolutely.
So,
Wob, very interesting conversation you just had. I managed to take the last 20 minutes of it.
Oh, thank you very much. So just for the folks at home, would you just introduce yourself and your role within the live events sector?
Yeah, my name's Wob Roberts. I'm a production manager. Most recently been working with Sam Smith. I've never had a proper job in my life. I left school, started working with theatre, and then moved into music as a backline tech. Did that for quite a few years. Became a production manager in '97 with a guy called Robbie Williams. And never looked back really since. I've just looked after, I did 17 years with Robbie, worked with One Direction, Coldplay, Queen. There's a myriad of people out there that I've worked with, some good, some bad, but it's always been fun, and I'm missing it really badly.
Absolutely. So, I mean, as a production manager on some major world tours, you look after up to 60 or 100 people on tour.
Yeah.
Most recently with Sam Smith, could you just talk through where you were on March 2020 when you kind of all the live shows kind of started to come to an end? Were you on tour at that time, or were you off the road at that time?
Well, I was actually at home with some time off. Right. I'd finished the Chainsmokers the previous November, at the beginning of December in 19. And I was taking 6 months sort of off before the Sam Smith tour was due to start going into pre-production in sort of May. And so it just basically fizzled out. We went down with, the last thing I did was I went down to Australia for Mardi Gras. And that was when people were saying, if you're going to the Southern Hemisphere, you should be wearing a mask.
Right.
And we went into Australia, and with as much social distancing as was starting to occur, but with Mardi Gras, I mean, it was just everybody rammed into the Hordern Pavilion. So there was nothing going on at that time. Got back, and literally, I mean, like within a week of getting back, we were locked down.
Yeah. But during this time as well, obviously being off the road, but you've actually been one of the kind of co-founders of the touring production group. Could you just explain to people at home what the touring production group is and what you've been up to in the last few months?
Yeah, came out of a conversation at a Zoom meeting. We were having a Zoom party for a past friend, Des Fallon, and Chris Vaughan just said, like, we should get a bunch of production managers together and decide how we're going to restart the industry, because the industry's always been very insular. It looks after itself. It's very, very good at looking after itself. And when other people try to direct it, it doesn't not work. But there tends to be things that happen that you really don't want to happen. So we just put an invite to a load of production people that we knew, and started discussing how would you work in a COVID situation with all the social distancing that goes on. I mean, this was back in June, sort of May, June. And so the guidance has changed 1,000 times since then. But we put together a document called the TPG Guide to Work in a COVID Environment. And that's available on it's still on the PSA website at the minute, and it's about to go onto our website, which is getting ready to go live. With the group of production people, venue people, we had promoters, designers, all sorts of people in the group that were doing the discussions and the creating the document. We've sort of distilled that down into into a small committee that are about to launch the TPG as being the place to become looking after touring people as opposed to production services or vendors or promoters or whatever. It's about the touring life professionals. And
talking of that, it's almost too hard a question to answer anyway because of the vast nature of it. But with an insight with the touring professional you're talking about there, what is the feeling within the community right now? As we've now moved into a new year, and in the UK, for instance, are in another lockdown. What's the kind of feeling amongst the people that work in the touring production?
Well, I mean, until the government say that we can actually go out and do shows, and this is just within the UK, until the government actually say that we're allowed to do shows, we're sort of in a holding pattern. We take our guidance as much as we like, but until it gets put into practice, there's not a lot we can do. It's being tested out on events like the ones that Emma and Rick and co were talking about earlier, with the streaming events. But as far as touring is concerned, there are a myriad of other problems that we've got to face before we actually get back to doing the way it used to be. Personally, I don't think we're going to get back to anything like what we were doing until probably 22. Late this year, possibly, we'll see shows. We'll definitely see shows this year. That's my gut feeling. But anything like what we were doing before, we've got to get Brexit apart. You've got to get round the opening up of countries to other people. The financial implication of going into a country and then sitting there for 10 days before you're allowed to even go and do a load-in. That's that in itself is financially damaging to everything. So there's going to be a lot of waiting around for other things to happen, and then like I said, that's Brexit notwithstanding. That's just moving from country to country as we used to do.
I think that's what's going to be interesting as well when we're talking about how events, as you say, are going to happen this year, but not in the sense of touring from country to country. But I suppose that's when the conversation from the previous talk, where streaming kind of comes in, if we could manage to get a one-off show and then still get it out to the audience, that's maybe when this kind of hybrid show may occur, right?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I see streaming not going away, one of the things that is I'm very aware of is if you spend a fortune putting a production together that you want to take around the world and you stream it, it's out there. You're taking away, it's been watched. You're taking away the need in some ways to take that around the planet, which putting on the sustainability hat is not a bad thing. But it's definitely, as Emma finished up, there's a load of people out there that depend on live touring for a livelihood, and we've got to try and cater for them as well as everything else.
Do you also agree with this being a bit of a sea change within the live events industry as a whole? Maybe because it's an industry that's always on the move and always going, there hasn't been a lot of chance to kind of like stop, reset, and think about certain protocols. I mean, you mentioned kind of like health and well-being of crew members as well. In this time when there hasn't been tours going on, has TVG also been involved in other ways that maybe touring will be better for those working in it as you move forward, and maybe could divulge some of those bits?
We created, once we got the COVID documents out of the way, it was like, which I don't want to berate the government, but if they'd have let us sort it out, we'd have got it sorted a long time ago. But yeah, we got the COVID document out, and then basically looked at ourselves and said, well, what else needs? We have a massive opportunity to reset and think about what we do for a living, what's wrong with it, and is there a way of putting it right? So we've got 3 working groups at the minute looking at sustainability. You know, the planet is foremost in everybody's mind at the minute. Especially, you know, you can look at the TV programs that are going out, and sustainability is definitely right up there. We're looking at mental health and the welfare of the touring crews, and the way that we're touring, and the what you ask people to do, the hours that you have to work. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of derision when you go into France about their 10-hour working limit. The fact that you might not have the same crew on the in as the out because they're only allowed to work 10 hours a day. On the other hand, they only have to work 10 hours a day. And that actually makes for a really good sort of working experience, you know, that whole 40-hour week that most people outside of the industry sort of experience. If you can bring a little bit of that in, then you know, so that you're not, I mean, regularly on tours, you know, I'm going to bed at between 1 and 2 in the morning, having finished a loadout, and I'm expected to be back at work at 6 in the morning, 6 to 7 in the morning, to mark out the floor and, you know, working with the riggers. So they're long working days in the live touring industry, and there's a lot of issues with mental health, how you deal with it, addiction, sleep deprivation. There's all those sorts of issues that sort of at least need looking at, and we have this opportunity to do that. And then finally, there's diversity. One thing we spotted immediately on the initial TPG meetings, we are basically a cis white male industry, and you know, trying to increase that diversity so that the people that are coming into the industry are women, transgender, people of color, everything, so that you actually get the across the board industry that we're trying to represent. I mean, the artists are across the board. Why aren't the people backstage?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why that maybe, I hate to use the word term blessing in disguise, but the fact that touring and shows will come back slower, it's not going to be like overnight and then we're ready to go again. Maybe some of these things can be implemented in terms of working hours and just, you know, bringing it back in before it's kind of full steam ahead maybe next year.
I think it's going to be a question of tripping over your own feet, because when we come back, the desire to go back will be massive, and there will be a lot of people that will want to go out the moment that the gates are open. There'll be a lot of tours wanting to do stuff. There'll be a lot of people going, right, okay, let's do this. Some of the rescheduled tours that I've seen, just the routings are incredibly tight, even by the old standards. And what none of that has taken into account is match fitness. A lot of people will have done nothing for 18 months. And then all of a sudden you're going to expect, you know, riggers to be going into the sky and pulling 2-ton motors on a daily basis. And there are people that are just not going to be physically able to do this because what we did was very strenuous.
Absolutely. So well, I think we're actually out of time, but thank you so much for speaking to us and giving a bit of an insight into, you know, what we can maybe look forward to the future, and hopefully see you out on the road again soon, eh?
Yeah, I'd really like that. I'd really, really like that.
Brilliant. Okay. Cheers, Wob. Have a good one.
Okay.
Thank you, Stu. Truly amazing sessions. I could have listened to them tell their stories all day, but we're about to move into networking rooms. But before we do that, I'd like to thank all of our speakers who joined us here today. I'd like to remind you that the next event in the Rise Spotlight series will be on March 9th. The theme for the next event will be Smart Buildings, the Way Forward. So make sure not to miss it. You can register right now with a link provided in the chat, so get to it. But now let's go on to today's networking rooms. You've got 2 wonderful sessions to choose from, which you can find in the sessions area on the left side of your screen. The first room is the Road to Recovery with Sean Wargo and Matthew Thompson. There you can learn about and discuss how AV companies in live events have responded to the challenges of the pandemic and what long-term changes the industry should expect. The second room, which is actually closely tied to what Wob just mentioned in the previous session, is called Diversity Backstage with Malekas Sanaromanos and Alana Pepin-Danisen. It'll focus on practical steps to increase the participation of underrepresented demographics in live events. So I definitely recommend that. You can also choose to join the networking area to be automatically matched with another participant for a 5-minute one-on-one meeting. So to sum up, all you got to do now is 3 things. Choose the room for you, ask a question, and have fun. I'll see you there in just a few moments.